All right, welcome to section 4.4, part 2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use our reciprocals to solve for our x. The reciprocals are going to be very helpful in canceling out fractions. If you look at this first example right here, you're like, ooh, it's a fraction. I don't know what to do. These are crazy. Well, we can use reciprocals to cancel out and make things great. So if I look here, this 2/3, to cancel it out, I can multiply it by its reciprocal. All right, so the reciprocal of 2/3, remember, flip. Flip the fraction. All right, flip the fraction. So we're going to flip the fraction. So instead of 2/3, I'm going to write 3/2. Well, remember, don't forget, whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. All right, 3/2. So let's go ahead and set up all our problems first. Right here, my fraction is 4/7. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. Instead of 4 divided by 7, 7/4. Flip the fraction. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. Got to multiply by the other, okay? So let's go ahead and set up the bottom as well. If you look right here, this is like the review, so let's use our past knowledge to get this going. P is by itself, 1/5. So what's the opposite of divide by 5? Well, multiply by 5. I can multiply by 5/1 because this is really 1/5. So I'm just going to multiply each side by 5/1 or just 5. Or just 5, right? You don't really need the 1 underneath. The bottom problem right here, it's really negative 1/11, so I'm going to multiply by 11/-1, right? This is really negative 1 x/11, so I'm going to multiply it by its reciprocal. Watch your signs. So whatever you do to one side, you got to do the same to the other side, all right? So now, whenever you have this, 3 divided by 3 is 1, 2 divided by 2 is 1. Those cancel out. I'm left with x equals 8 times 3/2. All right. Over here, let's look at that. We're setting up each problem step by step. 7 cancels out. 7's cancel out. The 4's cancel out. I'm left with x equals 16 times 7 divided by 4. Over here, the 5's cancel out and the 1's cancel out. I'm left with the p equals negative 4.7 times the 5/1, right? That's your signs. These two fractions cancel out. Negative 1 and negative 1 cancel out. 11's cancel out. 11 divided by 11. So these two reciprocals, when I multiply them by each other, I get 1. I'm left with 1x. Negative 22 times 11/-1. All right? So first, multiply by the reciprocal. Then we canceled out the reciprocals and wrote what's left. Right? Now we're just going to simplify, multiply and simplify. So you can either use your calculator and you can go 8 times alpha y equals 3/2. Oops. 8 times alpha y equals 3/2. Right? You get 12. Right? You can use the calculator, or we can go 8 times the top number. So big number times the top number. 8 times 3 is 24, divided by 2. 24 divided by 2 is also 12. So we could do that. 16 times 7, you can use the calculator, right? So we can go 16 times alpha y equals 7/4. We get 28. So you can use the calculator, or we can go 16 times 7. 16 times 7 is 112 divided by 4. So 112, 16 times 7 is 112. 112 divided by our 4, so 16 times 7 divided by 4, we get also 28. So you can use the alpha y equals, or multiply it all out. So negative 4.7 times 5. Don't forget your negatives. Negative 4.7 times 5 divided by 1. Anytime you divide by 1, it's going to just be itself. So negative 4.7 times 5, we get our negative 23.5. All right, move that up a little bit. Now we multiply by a reciprocal, but whatever we do to one side, we got to do to the other. So I got to multiply this negative 22 in with that fraction. Well, we can use our calculator. Negative 22, don't forget the negatives, watch your signs, times alpha y equals 11 over negative 1. Don't forget your negatives, watch your signs. That's probably what's going to mess you up if you mess anything up. Alright? So hopefully you can use reciprocals now. We're going to do a couple more problems together. But that's how you use reciprocals to solve for your x now. Alright? So if you look right here, we're going to do a couple more problems together before you got your practice work on the other sheet. But you have to write the reciprocal. So anytime you see a whole number like this, like negative 5, we're going to put a 1 under it. Why do I do that? Why do I put a 1 under the whole numbers? Because it's easier to flip the fraction, right? So if I flip this, I put 1 at the top, negative 5 at the bottom, done. Maybe I'll just do it like this. 6 at the top, 5 at the bottom. There's my reciprocal. All right, negative, keep the same sign. Negative, 3 at the top, 2 at the bottom. 6 at the bottom, so we're going to put the 1 at the top, 6 at the bottom. All right? Let's just flip, reciprocal, flip, reciprocal, flip, reciprocal, flip, reciprocal, flip. All right, so to solve for each variable, for each equation, I have to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. All right? Multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So I set up all my problems. And when you have fractions, we're going to use the reciprocal. So instead of 4 over 5, I'm going to multiply by 5 over 4. That's going to cancel. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. That's going to cancel to 1y. But whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. All right? So 20 times 5 over 4. I'll let you do that on the calculator. You tell me what that equals. Find the reciprocal of 1 over 8. Well, negative 8 over 1. See, so watch the signs. Make sure you bring the negative with that too. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. Okay? So the 8's cancel out, the 1's cancel out. You're left with 1x equals negative 4 times negative 8 over 1. All right? You put that in the calculator. You tell me what you get for x. All right? Right here, I got 1p over negative 12. Well, multiply by the reciprocal, negative 12 over 1. Negative 12 over 1. Whatever you do to one side, got to do to the other. Negative 12 over 1. The 12's cancel out, the 1 cancels out. I'm left with the p variable equals negative 12 over 1. Put that in the calculator using your alpha y equals, and let's see what you get. Right here, if you got a negative 1x, when there's no number there, it's automatically a 1. When there's no number there, it's automatically a 1. So this is negative 1 over 9. We'll flip that. That's 9 over negative 1. 9 over negative 1. So the negative 1's cancel out, the 9's cancel out. You're left with x equals negative 6 times 9 over negative 1. All right? So after you take the notes, if you're still confused, Mr. Cossier and I will come around and we'll help you. We'll work with you one-on-one. You got to ask for the help, okay? Number 9 right here. Same thing. So multiply by the reciprocal. Instead of 5 over 6, we're going to multiply it by 6 over 5. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. The reason why we're multiplying by the reciprocal is when two numbers that are reciprocals are multiplied by each other, they cancel out to 1. So I got 1x here, right? Equals 5 times reciprocal. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. That's why we got to multiply that in. So you tell me what that x equals, okay? Using your alpha y equals. If there's no number in front of r, it's a 1. So 1 over 3 is the same as the reciprocal. It's not the same as, but the reciprocal is the opposite, 3 over 1. Whatever you multiply by one side, I got to do the same to the other side. The 3's cancel out. I'm left with r equals negative 1.8 times 3 over 1. I'll let you put that in the calculator. You tell me what r equals. All right, so that's part 1 and 2 that you know now, and that you can go ahead and finish up on your classwork. There's a part 3 video that I want you to watch, and then we'll get that going, and then you'll be all for 4.4.